Hello everyone, welcome to this video. This video I would like to shoot as a continuation of a previous video in which we said that the environment is very important to companies. We said that, certain environments are more attractive because they can allow you more profits, because they have less competitors, because they might have more appealing trends, all sorts of reasons for which certain environments might be more attractive than different environments, right? This makes sense, kind of. But think about this for a second. You're in an environment and you have three companies. The first one goes bankrupt. The second one is super successful. The third company is mediocre. How can you explain differences across these three companies in the same industry if just the industry matters, if just the environment matters? Well, you can't. And that's exactly what I would like to touch upon in this video. It's not just the environment that matters, not just the industry, not just the sector, because in the same sector, industry, or whatever environment, in the same environment, you will have multitude of companies, and different companies will perform in very different ways. If this is the case, you cannot just attribute success and failure to the environment. No, it's also about the company itself. The company itself does matter as well. What you do as a manager, what you do with whatever it is that your company provides you with, that is what leads to differences between companies in the same environment. And that's what this video is very much about. For me to be able to explain this more carefully to you, I'd like to start first of all explaining that resources in this regard are very important. Resources you can define as a competitive asset. So it's an asset that not only you can have, but multitude of companies can have. It's a competitive asset, meaning that you can compete for it. And this asset should be either owned or controlled by a company. You can think about employees, you can think about money on your bank, right? These are all assets that you have ownership or control over, so you can use these resources. And regardless of whatever you're going to do, whatever activity you're going to fall back on, always you'll be needing resources to accomplish this. It is always resources that are behind any type of activity you do. So the second thing that's very important here are capabilities, because resources are going to be put to use through a company's capabilities. So a capability is the capacity to perform an activity competently, and this you do through utilizing resources. So the capacity basically means that you have the ability to do it, right? You are able. At the same time, we talk about an activity. This can be all sorts of activities. You can think about marketing activities, financing activities, operational activities, all sorts of activities. You should have the capacity for, you should be able to do it. And to do it, you need to utilize resources. And if you bring all of this together, then we're talking about capabilities, right? You can have the marketing capabilities, ensuring you to competently execute marketing activities through, for example, marketing employees, through, for example, marketing budget. And the same applies also to finance, same applies to operations. A company can have all sorts of capabilities that can be different across all sorts of functional areas. So resources are being basically directed, are being basically orchestrated through capabilities, and a strong, good capability, of course, ensures that resources are utilized in such a way that, of course, you accrue from these resources some benefits that others don't, which is basically what we're calling competitive advantage. So any company has resources, any company has capabilities. What matters is whether these resources and capabilities have some properties that will allow you actually to get extraordinary benefits from these, and basically for you to get competitive advantage out of it. So basically it boils down to an abbreviation, which is VRIN. This basically boils down to saying that your resource and your capabilities need to be, first of all, valuable. Right? It means that you really need to be able to get the benefit out of these resources and capabilities, right? If you can't, then of course it's a resource, it's a capability, but it is not a valuable resource or a capability. If you have employees that are not skilled, then they're still resources but not valuable. If you have money but not a lot, or if you have money but not from a strong currency, then again you have resource but something that's not valuable. Okay, the second part of VRIN is rare, right? The R. So a rare resource or a rare capability basically means that if you have a resource or a capability, it's not that likely that someone else is also going to have it. It is not that easy to acquire a certain resource. Think about a certain CEO, a certain member of your board of directors, right? If it is not that easy to get someone of the same caliber, then we can say that you have a resource, for example, that is difficult to acquire. And if you think about capabilities, if you have a certain capability of, let's say, product development, and your capability is such that it's not that easy for someone else to also have such a product development capability, because you have perhaps installed it in a particular way, because you have certain configurations, making that it is a rare type of capability that you have that others basically are not likely to have, then we're again talking about the rare capability in this regard. The third part of the VRIN abbreviation is inimitable. So it means that if you have a resource or a capability, it should not be that easy for someone else to copy you. Even if it is valuable, even if it is rare, if someone else can basically copy you after having seen that you have particular resource or capabilities, well, then it's really going to shorten the amount of time that you will be able to get these extraordinary benefits. And that's why you should make sure that if you have resource and capabilities that are valuable and rare, they should also be difficult to copy. This can be because you have behind the hood, so basically behind the scenes, a certain configuration that's not that easy to see from the outside. Again, if we talk about product development, people can see that you develop product, but if it is very difficult to grasp from people outside of your company, for other businesses, how you are actually doing it, with which type of machinery, which type of technological infrastructure, with which type of people. If that's difficult, then people won't exactly know how to imitate you because they don't know the fundamentals of it. Finally, what's important for your resource and capabilities to allow you to really get extraordinary benefits out of it is that your resource and capabilities should not be substitutable. So they should be non-substitutable. So the easiest way of understanding substitution is tea and coffee, right? If you can't have tea but you can have coffee, then perhaps you're not really going to seek tea. In the same way, if you have a top manager that they are not able to get because there's just one person like that all around the world, but if they can have a different type of a person, if they can have a computer code, if they can have artificial intelligence, for example, replicate the abilities of that top manager, well, then that top manager was substitutable. Right? At the same way, if you have a certain factory and that certain factory is very difficult to have the same of, but if they are basically able to substitute the need for that factory but through, for example, outsourcing, or through, for example, whatever it is, if someone can't have the exact same resource or capability, but if they can have something different that's going to approximate that resource or capability, then we're talking about substitution. And this basically will mean that your benefit that you will get from your resource or capability is not going to stick around. So we said that capabilities have types. They can change across all sorts of functional levels, right? Marketing, finance, operations. But at the same time, certain capabilities are change-oriented, right? So think about it. You have resources, you have capabilities, and as time passes by, your company gets older, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, right? So as your company grows older, your resources become very much ingrained in the context, and so do your capabilities. You're starting to use the same resources, you're starting to use the same capabilities over and over and over. So sometimes as the environment changes or as your competitors change, you will also need to use different resources. Perhaps those that might be more contemporary, those that might be of higher quality. You might also have to change your capabilities, perhaps with different people, perhaps with different infrastructure, you name it. In such a situation, because it's not that easy to break away from your past, you might need to have a mechanism in place in your company that keeps on changing your company on the go. because a capability is not a one-time thing, right? You need to have a capacity, and that capacity, of course, you only will have if you carry it out a couple of times. And so this dynamic capability is basically, again, a capacity to perform an activity competently, but in this case, it's a change activity. Again, it will utilize resources, but this time for the sake of changing your underlying current resources and your current capabilities as the environment changes and as your competitors change. A dynamic capability is very precious because it will allow you to keep on track with others and perhaps even leapfrog them. It will allow you to not be a company of 2 to 5 years, but a company of 10 to hopefully 100 years, right? And so it has the benefit of getting you out of your past tracks. So we've talked about resources, we've talked about capabilities. At some point you need to assess whether you have good resource and capabilities, so whether you're strong or not. And at the same time, you need to see how vulnerable you are, right? For this purpose, you can carry out a SWOT analysis. The SWOT analysis basically boils down to strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the strengths and weaknesses basically look at how strong or how weak your capabilities are. And of course, you can put the VRIN test to your resource and capabilities, right? You can look at whether they're valuable, rare, inimitable, and non-substitutable. And you can see whether you are weak in certain areas or whether you are having these extraordinary benefits in other areas. And this way, you can see at this current point how strong or how weak you are. At the same time, opportunities and threats are more outward looking. So what through your resource and capabilities can you do? Which opportunities can you seize? And so how can you improve your position? At the same time, which threats are around from competitors, from the industry that can hurt you because you might have certain weak resources and capabilities? A good way of basically understanding your company as a whole is this SWOT analysis carrying out throughout your whole value chain. So basically, your whole chain of activities, primary and secondary, that generate customer value. Primary activities can be marketing, there can be operations, right? And secondary activities can be more of supporting nature. That can be more, let's say, your tech databases. They can be more your supporting staff, administrative staff. So things that are basically going to support your primary activities from being carried out. This combination of primary and secondary activities basically is going to ensure that you have a strong value chain if you ensure that you're putting this SWOT analysis to your company in a good way. You're looking at your strengths and weaknesses of your resource and capabilities throughout all of the activities, chain of activities in your value chain, being both the primary ones where you're basically looking at your marketing, at your finance, at your operations, but also at your secondary ones, such as, for example, tech support. If you find out that certain parts of your value chain are weak and that needs improvement, then you have basically three things that you can do. You can benchmark yourself against whoever is the best in the industry, right? And this benchmarking is going to help you to learn from whoever is first, whoever is best in that industry. You can adopt best practices. This can be in your industry, can be in other industries. It can be something that if you apply it, you are also going to do your operations and your activities much better, and that your capabilities might perhaps become more efficient, right? So best practice adoption is the second thing that you can do. And the third thing is basically that you're going to reinvent the wheel in such a way that, you know, things that you cannot learn through benchmarking, things that you cannot improve through best practice adoption, perhaps you can do it by simply sitting in your chair with your R&D team, with your product development team, with whatever team, and that you're really going to think about how can we do this as the first company in this industry, and in doing this, how can we beat others, how can we leapfrog others. Of course, it's much more difficult than benchmarking and then best practice adoption, but hey, it is definitely worth it if you can pull it off. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, please don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe buttons. I wish you all the best in the world and hope to see you again anytime soon. Take care.